Happy New Year. It's great to be with you today talking about AI, as I feel like we're talking about all the time, but it's fun. It's great to see you all. Thanks for joining. Those that are catching the recording, appreciate you spending some time with us today. In our short 30 minutes together, we're going to talk about how AI tools, specifically large language models, can be used for really content generation. That's really the focus. I put creative writing in there, and I think creative writing is an important part of that, and I'll mention some ideas around that, specifically because of some of the conversations I've been having with some folks, that's their goal is the creative writing side. But content generation in general can kind of follow some patterns, and so that's what we're going to look at. One of the cool things about AI in general is it's made to follow patterns. So you get some with varying results, but you get some pretty specific things that lead together because it's built on patterns. So because we know AI, large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, etc., are built on data sets and are trained to follow certain things and to move forward in certain ways, those create patterns. So it makes it a little bit more predictable, not 100%, but it makes it a little bit more predictable. So we can ask it and generate things in a fairly predictable manner. So we're going to look at some of those today. And hopefully, my goal is to get you some ideas, to get you going on a path. Maybe it's for the new year that you're just diving into this. Maybe you've been using some of this AI generating content, helping you in your daily work for a little while, but I'm hoping you will walk away with some ideas, maybe some fresh takes on some things to help you get started. So my name is Nathan Wells. If I haven't had the chance to meet you, and our primary goal is leading training and developing content. And we work with schools. That's all of us that work for IT. That's our background, is education. But we also work with companies, whether it's companies that are working directly in education or specifically with AI. More and more of our conversations have been with companies about how do we roll this out? How do we put together an implementation plan around using AI, generative AI, in our finance, HR, communications, whatever it is, daily tasks to be more successful, to be more on top of things, to manage our time better, to put together things that maybe we haven't thought of or been able to put together before. So that's been really exciting and kind of a cool new take on this stuff. Universities have been another really big one that have been trying to really stay ahead of this and really see what is possible here. Some resources I'll mention as we go through to also point you to, because I am not the expert. Anybody who says they're an AI expert is probably selling some snake oil, because it changes so quick and that everything is constantly adapting and changing. But there are some people I think that are leading kind of the conversation. And so that's who I read, who I kind of follow and keep up with, and I'll try to point out some of those as we get going here. So question, you can post this in the chat. You can give me a thumbs up if you use the Teams reactions. But I'm curious, those of you that are joining, how many of you are already using a large language model? I just put a couple of examples on here. So this is a screenshot of Claude. We see ChatGPT, even though the logo was kind of hanging out by itself there. Copilot. I didn't include Gemini, but it could be Gemini. How many, I saw 2 thumbs ups, how many of you are already using these pretty frequently? Like you're familiar with the basics. You understand kind of how some of this works. Nice. Okay, I recognize a few of your names in the live, so I know some of you are Microsoft folks, are familiar with the Microsoft suite. So Copilot, got it. Awesome. Well, hopefully you kind of understand some of the basics already. I'm not going to get into the basics. Gemini, great, thanks for adding that to the chat. I'm not going to get into the basics today. If you're interested in that, we did do a webinar. You can look at that on our YouTube channel, or there's tons of resources out there. Don't just depend on me. There's some other great resources out there as well that really talk about the basics of using a large language model and kind of how it's made and all that. I took a course over winter break through Microsoft Learn, which is a great resource if you're not familiar with it. It's just free learning courses. Some of it, I'd say, a little more than a quarter of it is geared specifically to education, but a lot of it's not. A lot of it's geared towards the IT and those that are curious about IT things. Example, I took a course on understanding the fundamentals of AI. And what was really interesting for me was how AI models are trained. And it didn't get super technical. It was super layman's terms. It was a lot easier to understand and to follow. I was a little worried going into it because I don't have an IT background. Unlike Diana, who's joined us. I never worked in the IT world. I partnered with them in certain things and whatnot. But this course did a really good job of helping us see how it comes together and kind of what a training model looks like and the different types of training models. Because as some of you may already know, different AI and AI agents, as sometimes the term is used, are trained in different models. And so because of that, their outputs can be different. So that was really interesting for me. So if you're curious, I would highly recommend checking out Microsoft Learn. I took the AI 900, I believe is what it was called. And it does a good job just kind of going through and helping you understand how AI models are trained. So that was really interesting for me. So there's a lot of good resources out there of helping us understand that. And today, my focus isn't going to be on that. It's not how do they work. It's not even necessarily exactly how to use them, although I'll show a couple of examples. My focus is how do you kind of use them for your specific role or to really get something going. So a couple of examples to start off with. I'm just going to organize my screen here a bit. So types of prompts that we can be using. A lot of using AI successfully comes down to prompt engineering. And we talk about this a lot. If you've been a part of any of our webinars or trainings or conference presentations, I'll be in Orlando next week at the FETC conference, and I have a couple of sessions on AI and using Copilot specifically. And we talk about prompt engineering. And I'm not going to get into the methods of prompt engineering. Again, there's lots of materials online. You can look at that. But I have seen a couple of types of prompts. So I'm not going to type it out for you, but if we think of and break down prompting into a couple of types, maybe that'll help you in your specific role, in those that you support or in your daily job function, be able to think about and come up with your own prompts that are specific to you. I don't know what all of your roles are, so I'm not going to try to meet all of those, but I want to give you a couple of examples. So one is iterative prompting. So this one is interesting to me. I've always appreciated iteration, and especially coming from an education background, a tech coach background, working in a district office, managing a team of trainers and tech coaches. We talked about iteration a lot because iteration is this act of taking something that you tried and remaking it to be what you want it to be, right? So when we talk about iterative prompting, what we mean by that is giving the AI an opportunity to add to make better what it did originally. And usually what this looks like is a part one, part two, part three, however many parts you want to add to it in your prompt. So, example, an iterative prompt could be something like telling the AI who it is. We a lot of times say give the AI a persona. Because remember, this is just a computer program, and you have to tell it how to act, how to work, how to put all those things together. So give it a persona. So you are a manager, you're a team leader, you're a school principal, you're head of HR, you're whatever it is. Give it the role that you want it to play. So in my example, I'm just going to say you're a director. You're a director. You're going to draft an email to all of your team, inviting them to a workshop about integrating AI in their job. The workshop will cover these tools, these objectives, fill in the blanks, right? Include the workshop time, date, and their call to action, which is RSVP. It's part one, right? Part one. Part two, this is one prompt. Part two is you're going to create 3 objectives, workshop objectives, written as SMART goals. So now we're giving the AI who it is, who its audience is. So we're giving it a persona, we're giving it an audience, we're giving it an objective. And then based on that objective, part two, and I actually label that in the prompt, is for it to write SMART goals based on what it already knows it's going to be writing about, what the workshop is, who the audience is, and from who it should be writing it from as the director of that department or of that group. So you're asking it to add on to make new ways that it's going to use that first information to come up with new information, right? 3 workshop objectives written in SMART goals. It's an example of iterative prompting. Now, you could go on step 3, 4, 5. You could continue steps. And one of the beauties about all these large language models, and to be honest, I haven't used Gemini very much, but I understand that it works pretty much the same. I've been bouncing between ChatGPT, Claude, and Copilot, Copilot being my main everyday user. And all of them have this same concept. Once you start a chat with it, it will remember what it is through the series of that chat until you tell it to start something new. Tell it to do a new chat, to start a new prompt, to start blank. And so because of that, you can add on to any of these examples I'm giving and make them as long as you want. Now, the other thing we can do is we can tell it to delineate, goodness, I can't talk, section delimiting. And this is, again, kind of breaking it down into pieces, but continuing the same train of thought. So section delimiting is the idea of breaking into parts, and you don't have to label them part 1, 2, 3, but just break it down for it. So first I'm going to give it a prompt, and I'm going to hit enter, click go, tell it to give me the information. Then I'm going to add it another section, another step. And so this example could be I'm writing a newsletter. So if you work for a communications department, if you work in HR, if you're an educator, whatever your role is, you're writing a newsletter. And in it, you're going to talk about your whatever it is that you want them to understand. So I am, so who are you, right? What's the persona that the AI should be aiming it to be coming from? Who's the voice that it should be coming from? Then you're going to say, I want you to write a section for my newsletter on effective communication. That's my example. Put in whatever your subject is. Now, help me write it. So my prompt so far is, I am a communications director. I'm writing a section of a newsletter on effective communication. Help me write it. Begin with a friendly introduction to provide a brief overview of the importance of communication. Mention the benefits of maintaining consistent and positive interactions in communication. That's my prompt. AI gives me the draft of that, and I say, okay, next, add information about strategies for communication, including dates, digital tools, etc. And you can put in, maybe you have some other specifics you add in there. Enter, okay, go, right? It gives you its next response to that. Then you add in another. So we're building on that first one, and we're continuing to add on different sections. So I knew at the beginning I wanted it to write all of this, but I'm breaking it down into sections. And that does 2 things. One, I have seen work really well, where I just give it everything I wanted at the beginning. But then the response from the AI gets really long. I kind of like the section delimiting because then it breaks it down and adds to it from one section to the next. So it helps it kind of understand and gives it and adds on to it. So by the time I get to part 3 or part 4, it has more, the AI, when I say it, has more information and can add on what it needs to. So that's a good example of section delimiting. Task creation. This is one I use constantly, almost daily. I use it a lot. So I'll drop in meeting notes. We use Microsoft Teams, but think of Zoom or whatever tool you use. If you can get a transcript, depending on your subscription and what you do, you can have it take that transcript, drop that transcript into ChatGPT or whatever tool you use, and ask it to summarize and give tasks. It's a fantastic way to do it. The other thing, and I actually saw this on LinkedIn and tried it for the first time and was really impressed by it. The post was actually from the CEO of Canva, the creation tool. And one of her ways that she's been using AI that I just loved, I thought it was such a cool idea, is getting out of the office, going for a walk. And while walking, put in your headphones, whatever you have, and be brainstorming or kind of brain dumping all of your ideas. When you get back, drop it into whatever AI tool you use and ask it to create tasks out of, or objectives and tasks out of that list. I loved it. I thought that was so good because that's what I struggle with a lot of times. I have these ideas that are sitting out there. Sometimes I make it into my notes, sometimes they don't. And then it's like putting objectives and tasks to those. How am I going to accomplish this? Break this down for me. AI does a fantastic job with that. ChatGPT, Copilot are very similar with this one. I feel like they do a really good job at breaking this down. So that's a fantastic one. So task creation. So whether it's taking meeting notes, so you or somebody on your team has actually typed out meeting notes from a team meeting or a meeting with a group, and asking the AI to help create actionable tasks, or giving it a project list and asking the AI to break it down into manageable tasks based on this timeline, right? Just as another idea. It's a great one. Another one is chain of thought. So chain of thought can be really helpful to break steps down, and this is kind of along the same lines. But what I like about this one, excuse me, is asking the AI to ask you questions. This is super helpful for breaking down a project and for brainstorming. So my day-to-day role, I am a lot of times coming up with workshops or putting together outlines and agendas for workshops, brainstorming new workshops, and that kind of stuff. So that's a lot of my research time is built around that. So the chain of thought has been really helpful for me. So I give the AI, in this example, I've been using Claude for this a decent amount. I feel like Claude does a really good job with creativity, which is kind of cool. It's not connected to the internet. So just remember that's different than Copilot, which I use for everything, other stuff. So Claude's not going to go and like research something and pull it back for you. But based on its database, it really has some cool creative ideas I haven't seen come up. And I've done the exact same prompt in ChatGPT or Copilot. But so, for example, one I did is I'm speaking next week at a conference, and I asked it as a chain of thought. I said, help me plan steps for creating an interactive hands-on workshop that will help users understand game-based learning. And so then I said, take me through each of the steps in creating an outline, a research question, how to gather resources, and plan out my presentation. I typed these words. Wait for my response before continuing, and give helpful feedback and encouragement, redirecting miscommunications and off-task behavior. So now that last part, the off-task behavior, is just a leftover because I've used this with students. It might help for me too to keep me focused. But that is something I actually have used over winter break. I was working on my presentations, and it actually step by step asked me questions. This is something I don't think we do enough of, is basically creating a brainstorming partner or a tutor or a colleague, right? That's where Microsoft got the whole naming for its AI chatbot, Copilot. It's to be this pilot along with you, to co-lead, to co-author these ideas. So chain of thought is really helpful for that, with telling it, hey, ask me questions. You do have to tell it to wait, though. Otherwise, it won't wait for your response. So wait for my response before continuing. Ask these types of questions. So you can give it a lot of those thoughts, which has been really helpful for me personally. Let's see, there's a couple others in context learning. So this one is also really helpful with trying to get strategies or helping them understand, helping me, whoever I'm doing this with, understand how to work on something. So I give it a context, I give it kind of understanding, and it helps break tasks down. So I did this one when I was taking, as an example, I did this concept when I was taking that course, the AI 900, of understanding how AI, large language models, are trained. And so I said, help me understand, break down how this works. And so I gave it the prompter on what I was learning. There was like a couple of sentences I copy and pasted out of the course and dropped it into Copilot. Then I said, I'm a new student, an adult learner. I actually use those words. I'm an adult learner trying to understand how large language models work. I've just learned this content. Help me understand and break down. And what are some strategies I can use to remember this content? And so it gave me some very specific tools and ideas in context to what I was trying to learn. I actually use this with my own kids. I have a middle schooler, a high schooler. I have an elementary student as well in my house. But specifically for the high school and middle schooler, I asked Copilot to help me come up with strategies based on what they were learning to help them remember what they were learning. So it's given me basically tutoring suggestions, right? Which is amazing. And we can all, even as adults, use that to help us remember things that are really important, that are coming up, anything like that. I know I'm kind of going through these kind of fast, so please drop them in the chat. Ping me if you have any other questions. After this session, if you want to talk more or want to ask ideas, you can find me on LinkedIn under Nathan Wells. And EdTech Wells is what I use in all of social media. So you can always ping me, whether it's DM or in the main interface, and ask questions. Love to continue this conversation. But I want to talk through one more, and then I'll try to pull this up in a second so we can look at an example, because I realize my screen hasn't changed much. But assistant generator. This one is the only long form prompt that I'm going to look at with you all. You can get into, and I've seen some groups come up with some very long form prompts, specifically around data engineering, IT, really coming up with programming. How are you using different programming languages? And you can get really long prompts that help answer things and help you over time. And you can keep using the same one because you put in all the information ahead of time. Example, you tell the AI their role. So your role is an AI assistant that helps the instructor with writing training descriptions for sessions with audience on what your training topic. Your goal is to help the user create engaging and informative training descriptions. You can tell I wrote this for myself. Then I gave it 5 steps with point by point what that looks like. So this one, I'm actually going to share my screen, and we're actually going to look at this one together. Now, I don't do a lot of long form prompts, but this one has been really helpful for me. So I want to look at this one together and hopefully give you an idea of what this could look like. Oh, just messed up my screen, so I apologize. All right, so let's get this a little bit bigger here. Sorry for that. And what I'd like to do is look at this together and how this could be set up. So this is the long form prompt, and the prompt itself is pretty long. It's got 5 steps, and then it walks them through it. So it's going to help you get going. So I'm going to scroll back up so you can see it a little bit better. So prompt, you're an AI assistant helping instructor write training descriptions. Goal, your goal is to create created engaging information descriptions. Instructions, so this is where I detail out what I want it to base its responses on, how I want it to ask me questions, how it's going to be put together, and what I want out of it as the output. So I gave it this long form prompt, and then it says, hi there, I'm your AI assistant, here to help you do this. Can you describe the key elements of what you want to include in this training description, for example? Right? So it's giving me the things, it's asking me those questions. And what's beautiful about this prompt and prompts similar to this that you might want to use on your own is that you can take this prompt and use it over and over and over again. You don't have to remember the specifics. If you put together a prompt like this that you can use repeatedly, it's a little evergreen, right? Meaning it's not going to become kind of go away, or it's going to use up its functionality. So this is a great way that you can use this and be able to ask certain questions. So I mentioned the game-based learning session, so I'll just use that as an example. We are learning about game-based learning. How are educators using this in their classroom? And I would do a lot more objectives than that, but based on our time together, I'm just going to start with that. So you can see it gave me an example draft, and then asked me another question and lets me go on. Even the beauty of Copilot, it linked to a couple of resources. So it gave me these. Now, I want to show you the exact same thing in Claude, because I think it's helpful to look at, and I would encourage you to look at how this works in multiple places to see really which AI tool helps you with that task the best. So that was something I would encourage you also out of this time together, is look at which tool does this better for you. Because like I said, I felt like certain tools do certain things the best, right? So Claude, I feel like, is really creative. And so you can see it's given us that. And then I'm just going to grab the things I said before to save us some time. There we go, copy. Perfect. And so you can see it actually broke it down a little bit different, which is great. And then we could go back and we could kind of compare, like, okay, this one, similar length to what Copilot gave us. If we were to put those side by side, you can kind of see those a little bit. So I think it's great to kind of compare and see with how they came together and what's different about them and which ones you like better. So I don't switch back and forth between AI tools real often, but I think it's worth doing, especially as you're kind of trying to figure this out and decide what you want to use. I think it's really helpful to kind of put a couple side by side. Gemini, as I said, I haven't used a ton, but I would encourage you to, if you have access to that, try that a few times. Try ChatGPT versus Claude. I feel like Claude and ChatGPT are pretty different, and you can even see quickly in the responses here, because Copilot is based on ChatGPT, so it's going to be almost the same as what GPT would give you. So you can see some differences here. So I think that's really valuable to see what the differences are and what you can come up with and what the systems come up with for you. And yes, I can share this prompt with those of you that are in the chat. So there's that long form prompt that I used. So kind of interesting to see what it came up with. I love that you can come up with different prompts for different purposes. And I think that's a key thing to remember as we're thinking about this, and as we're looking at the ways that we can use these different AI tools, is to remember that the different AI tools have different purposes, and your prompts should be dependent on what you're doing. So think of the different types of prompts we talked about. Is this an iterative prompt, where you're coming up with different ways that you want to get responses? Is this really looking at a type of prompt that's going to help you go through and understand whatever the topic is that you're talking about in a different way? So sectioning it out, like I said, chain of thought is the one I use a lot, where you give it, kind of help it break down what you're doing. And also the tasks. I think the task-oriented prompting can be really powerful and kind of help you as well. Love to open it up. If there's anybody in the chat that wants to share either an example of a type of prompting that they've been successful with or been using, or any of their feedback on the different examples I've given, love to have you drop those in the chat. We are going to wrap up right now, just based on time, but I appreciate you joining us and having a chance to look at this together.